Welcome to the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast, where we hope to inspire you to embrace your God-given gifts, skills, and passions in order to lead with confidence. We want you to remember that you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God, and you are fully loved by Him.
You have been designed on purpose by God with unique gifts and passions in order to love and lead those around you. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, a pastor's wife, business owner, mom, and writer.
And I'm Esther's co-host, Holly Kane. I'm a wife, mom, and business owner. I also write at hollykane.org, where I focus on my passion for women's ministry.
Together, we chat about important issues that Christian women leaders face. In addition, we interview other women just like you who lead in various roles, from church to community to business. Through this podcast, we offer you encouragement, tools, and resources to help you on your leadership journey. We are so glad you're here with us. Welcome to this episode of the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. Today, I am here with my co-host, Holly, and we are going to talk about, we're calling it the state of the podcast. It's kind of like State of the Union, right?
Yep.
What was it you wanted everybody to do when they're listening, Holly?
Feel free to stand and clap every time there's a sentence we say that you like.
Yeah, right. So we'll be watching for those selfies of you cheering for us. It's really awkward to say. It does feel weird. And yes. And so this podcast episode is going to be a little different than our normal. This is the last episode of the year. At least that's currently what we're planning in our timeline, that this will go out near the end of 2021. And so really what we kind of want to do is just kind of fill everyone in on where we're at with the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. We have been around for 3.5 years. And if you're listening right now and you just started listening maybe a few months ago, or maybe sometime in the past year, maybe you didn't realize how long we've been doing this. And so we actually do have some changes coming to the podcast that we're going to share on this episode. So, but we're not going to tell you those at the beginning.
No. We wouldn't be good podcasters if we just had it right out at the front.
Right. We want to let you know there are some things we're going to be sharing to give you an update on where we're going in the next year. But we're going to start with like a little bit of a recap of where we've been. We're going to talk a little bit about 2021 highlights, from the year. We usually do something at the end of the year where we kind of just talk about the year. And we already sort of did like an episode sort of about that. What did we do?
Well, it was more personal reflections
rather
than on that podcast.
Right. And so this will be specific to the podcast of 2021 highlights of kind of the year. Yeah. And then we'll talk about where we're going in the year ahead. So.
Okay. So did you have like a small little out of body experience when you said 3.5 years? Because when you said that, I was like, are you like, what? We've been doing this for 3.5 years?
It does feel weird, but at the same time, it doesn't, because it feels like it's been a long time, but it also feels like we just said, let's do this like yesterday. So
it feels like we've always done this.
Yeah.
Which we haven't, right? But it feels like we've always done this.
It's definitely become a very big part of our lives.
Yes,
for sure.
It has.
Yeah. So let's go back in time, Holly. Let's tell the folks who are listening who maybe don't know the backstory. And again, if you know the backstory, well,
you've heard it a few times.
It's okay. Just listen along, because we do have some new things to share in this.
Yes, we do.
Like where we've been. So this all started in 2018.
Yep.
I really wanted to have a podcast for like a year before I started this. So, but it really became serious in like January of 2018. I was like, okay, I had a vision for where I wanted to take my own brand and my own blog and all that. And the podcast became the key part that I saw as the way forward.
Yeah.
And so we've shared how I invited you into the process, because I knew I needed a co-host. I knew that.
So first you baited me over to your house with a free dinner.
Food is a great place to propose ideas.
No. So we were over at your house, and probably our kids were doing something crazy. And we were just having dinner and, Esther was like, hey, I have an idea and I want to know if you want to do it with me. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And she was like, I want to start a podcast. And I was like, yes, you should. And she's like, and I want you to co-host with me. And I was like, yes, let's do it. And I remember you looking at me with such a surprised face. And she's like, don't you want to think about it? And I was like, no. Right. She was like, okay, let's do it. But honestly, that was a weird time for us because we were trying to figure out whether we were moving to Florida. Zach had been traveling.
Yeah.
And we knew that we couldn't sustain that for very much longer. So he had been traveling a lot. And we were just like trying to figure out how to make this work for our family. And so we kind of knew that Florida was on the horizon. And I was like, I'm saying yes to this thing, but I don't know how this works. And thank the Lord for the invention of Zoom.
Right.
Because that's how we were able to make this all happen. So,
yeah. And I had been using Zoom for quite a long time and I knew a lot of podcasters. I had been working with podcasters and I knew we could, do it this way. I know there's better ways to record with a co-host, but this is the way we've done it because it's the easiest. And So at the same time actually before we launched officially, we started to do a lot of prep work. So we started to research and we created a Facebook group that now is almost 2,000 women in that group, our Purposeful Leadership Facebook group, which you are still welcome to join. If you're listening and you are not in our group, why are you not in the group?
Yep. Come on. Let's go.
Because that's a great place for us to continue to get to know you and to develop conversations around leadership. So we started the Facebook group, we started researching, we started brainstorming all the topics for the podcast. And we also created our mission for the podcast, which is to help women embrace their gifts and lead with confidence. That was really the underlying message that we had. That's what you hear in the intro, in the outro every time. Like that's what this is about. And we just wanted to see women be able to step into leadership in whatever that looks like for them. So we are not necessarily about kind of this like gung-ho, like women have to lead in church or women have to lead in the workplace or women have to lead in XYZ. Like we want you to follow what God has led you to do. Yeah. And that could be that you just want to be a more effective leader for your kids. It could be that you want to be a more effective leader in your workplace or as a volunteer at church, or maybe you are on staff and you want to lead your team well. It can look a lot of different ways. So that was kind of the vision that I had, was there wasn't something out there at the time for women in leadership specifically that I saw addressing women and helping women in this way. And that's what we wanted to do with this podcast.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was just going to say that, the part of the reason that, yes, you wanted to start a podcast, that's really it. But this was birthed out of the problem that, we both wanted to grow in leadership and there wasn't really anything out there for us that was for women specifically, by women specifically, and that had no agenda when it comes to where women can lead, if that makes sense. Right. And so it was really important for us when we say embrace your gifts and lead with confidence, that is in any spectrum. Yeah. And I know that you've just mentioned that, but that is really important for us because no matter what your theological bent is, no matter what your life situation is, it doesn't matter. All are welcome. And so anyway, I just think that for women leaders, there are not a lot of safe spaces to have these conversations. And that's really what we wanted to create. So, yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the piece about the theological aspect too, because if you've listened to this for any length of time, you probably know that Holly and I don't really share where we stand on some of these secondary issues. Yeah. And part of the reason is that
That's not what this is about. This is not about, having a theological stance that we say, this is how it's supposed to be. And you have to agree with us to listen to this podcast. That's not what we want. Now we do have I have a statement of faith on my website. I'm pretty sure Holly aligns with that statement.
Yes, I do.
And it's, we do hold to a traditional historic Christian faith, but we also are of the mindset that we major on the majors and minor on the minors. And we don't, I'm okay with someone thinking that women should be in, pastoral roles if that's where they land theologically. And I'm okay with it if they say, you know what? No, I don't think that. I'm okay with you liking the Enneagram. I'm okay with you hating the Enneagram.
Yep.
Let's not argue about it because it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not.
I'm going to get on a rant, so I better stop talking about that. But but it's okay to disagree about these less important things. And that's why we don't come down hard on certain things on this podcast, because we want you to come to a conclusion based on what God shows you through scripture and through the Holy Spirit and all of that.
I think it comes down to, we are not going to spoon feed you these things. We trust you to have your own discernment, and we hold very tightly in our own sort of mindset, I guess is the best way to say this, to the sort of chew and spit mentality, which Hillary Morgan Ferrer talks about in her book, Mama Bear Apologetics. And it's about, just because there's one piece of something that you disagree with does not mean all the rest of it is bad. So, for example, business books not written by Christian people are not bad. I mean, there's an entire book written by, a man about how to handle your money that is based on Christian principles. He may not even realize it, but these are all based on Christian principles. And so it's like, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And that's the mentality that we've taken. We trust our listeners to do their own discernment, do their own praying, having their own statement of faith and sticking to their own convictions. And if an episode's not for you, skip it. You know what I mean? We trust you, and that's what it comes down to. So,
yeah. Okay.
We need to move on because
we did not have that in our notes. Okay. So, but really it's, again, going back to that overarching mission of, embrace your gifts and lead with confidence in whatever way that looks like. So let's tell them what has happened since we started.
I can't even
share the numbers.
We're going to say this. Yeah.
Okay. Well, in the first year, let's just say in the first year, we hit 50,000 downloads in under a year, which was super exciting. If you're not familiar with podcasting, the way it works is a download is basically anytime someone listens to the episode, right? It's different than downloads in terms of like somebody clicks the button that says download. They don't actually have to click a button that says download. If you are listening to this on your phone right now, whether it downloaded or not, that counts. And there's all this weird like mumbo jumbo that I won't get into because I don't even understand it, but there's a certain time amount that qualifies it as a unique download, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, that doesn't mean that 50,000 people listened because we had 52 episodes in that first year.
Right.
So it's like, that's not the number of people. It's the number of times that an episode was accessed. Our feed was accessed by somebody. So either way, it's a big number because that is out of the ordinary. Like that number of downloads in the first year is not a normal number for podcasts. There's plenty of podcasts that have way, way, way more than that. And that's amazing. But it was exciting for us because we didn't know how many people were actually going to be on board with this podcast from the start. And so it was very exciting to see that, oh yeah, okay, there are women that need this content.
Yeah, I think it underscores the fact that it sounds weird to say it this way, but we were right. There was a hole, if that means.
Right. Yes. Yeah. There was a hole.
Yeah. So okay. I hate to say it that way. We were right. Like you should listen to us, but we were feeling it. And so we responded, which is the underlying theme of leadership anyway. So
exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about the numbers. So since we started and as of today, we have 410,000 downloads.
Yeah.
Which I want to like ring a buzzer or something like that.
Yeah. I want to do something really, really big when we get to 500,000. Like we're going to have to do something big.
500,000 will be
have
really
like a
cool.
party or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And this one surprised me that we found out, I found out today, was that we are listened to in 161 countries, which is kind of funny because when Esther put that down on our notes, I was like, how many countries are there? Which I don't know if that makes me not very smart or if the general population knows how many countries there are, but
I didn't know how many countries there are in the world.
What did we say? 190 something countries?
I think 194 countries in the world.
So there's about 30 countries that don't listen to us, which if you think about it, we're only in one language. Yeah. It's not like we have people translating this. Yeah. So,
and I will say, I mean, and I said this to you, like some of those are literally, there's one download in that time frame. So
that doesn't bother
me.
That
doesn't mean there's like active listenership going on in that many countries, but that many countries have been reached by this message.
We're grateful for our one listen in Mozambique.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing that I took a minute to sort of count up was how many guests we've had. And it was surprising to me. We've had about 85 guests in approximately, this is our 184th episode.
Yep.
I mean, those are unique guests. So we've had people who've come on multiple times.
Yep.
So guest episodes are higher than 85, but I don't know. It really speaks highly of the fact in my mind that we want this to be a community and it's not just me and you pushing this forward, that we really want to hear stories of other women and support women in every level of leadership.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And some of those guests have been, just women that I knew. Some of them have been quote unquote bigger names, and some have been ones that have applied to be on the show. And we have, I will just say there too, like we have gotten so many applications and a lot of them we haven't been able to have on. And I feel bad because I would love to have every single person on. But it is a lot of work and it's a lot of time to prep and plan. And we also, again, we care about you, the listener, and we care about making sure that what we are providing you is valuable and helpful for you. And there are some people that apply to be on just to promote something.
Yeah.
That's a reality. And so that's not what this podcast is about. It's not just about someone coming on and promoting their latest book, but there are times that we obviously have authors on but we still want that content to be applicable to you in your leadership. So that's something we have tried to really stay on top of. I haven't always done the best job of it, but I've tried to, so that it makes it so that when you listen, you're getting a unique experience that applies to leadership as a female in the Christian space. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I think the great thing about all of the guests has just been getting so many different perspectives on things that we could never have. And I love the fact that you said that we try to stick really close to what our content is and what our mission is. But at the same time, you and I can't push that forward ourselves. And I've said that already in this episode, but what I'm trying to say is that, everyone has a unique experience, and we think it's really important to highlight those unique experiences because we want to be as relatable as possible. And we know that our listeners are varied as well. And so we want to represent as many different type of experiences as we can.
Yeah.
And so every time I think about the guests that we've had, I'm always just so grateful. And I feel like they've become our friends too. I mean, some people we haven't kept in touch with as much, but some people we have. And I feel like I have this great circle of women leaders that at any time I'm sure I could reach out to and say, hey, what about this? Can you help me or whatnot? And so it feels really great to have such a really great network of really good guests. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the really exciting awards that we've won?
Sure.
Yes.
So, in case you didn't know, our podcast is an award-winning podcast. We thought about putting that in the intro at some point, but it feels a little silly. But anyway, back in 2020, I went to the Spark Christian Podcast Conference, and they had the very first year. It was the first year of the conference and the first year of the Spark Christian Podcast Awards. And we won 2 awards.
Yes.
We won
2
the
awards.
Outstanding Podcast Host Co-hosted award. And we also won the Outstanding Interview Podcast. So we actually got in both of those categories, which is kind of cool.
Gives me all the feels, even
really fun
since it was last year. Like,
yeah, I know. Last year, this was right before COVID hit, and yeah, it was a great conference, and it was fun to just have that recognized of the work that we've put in. And I think we do work really hard at being good interviewers and being good co-hosts. So it's nice to have that on my shelf. I mean, you can't see it, but I have them on my shelf behind me normally when we're sitting here. So,
I love that. So, and I think that, I mean, I feel like we're really blessed to have been honored for that award, but like, I think that to some extent, the comments that we get from people are just as much of an award.
Oh, yeah.
And just as encouraging, if not more encouraging sometimes, because it's great to be honored by your peers, but it's even better to be honored by the people that you're targeting, that you're trying to help. And so you have some of those types of things that you wanted to share. So can you tell us what that's been for you?
Yeah. And it's hard to pick just a couple because we have gotten a lot of amazing feedback from listeners, just random comments in the Facebook group, Instagram DMs, reviews on the podcast. And so I just thought there's 2 that really have come to mind. One is when I got an Instagram DM from someone who said that she was using the podcast, like she felt like she never was a leader. And the podcast gave her the confidence to start leading a small group. And then she was using the podcast episodes as her topic discussion in the small group, which was so cool. I was like, that's amazing. Like, I never thought of that. And, she would like have everybody listen to an episode and then they would discuss it in their small group. So that was cool because it was just like, that was one thing that someone could actually take action on and be able to start stepping into leadership. And hopefully she's been able to grow even more through the years with that. And then we've just gotten other listeners, and this isn't one specific one, but we definitely have had people say, the podcast or something that somebody said on the podcast changed their life or gave them more confidence or did what we said, like help them to embrace their gifts and start leading or grow in their leadership. And so those comments, I think they're more valuable than the awards because they are meaning that we are accomplishing the mission and the goal of the podcast.
Yeah.
So that's been super exciting to receive those.
Yeah. Anytime that someone has said in a review or in the Facebook group or wherever, I feel like I've met my people, or I was looking for this and I finally found it, or I didn't even know I needed this. And here it is. Like those types of things. I just kind of picture, we have this big room with all these people and, the people are coming in the door and I'm just hugging them and say, come on in, that's how it feels. And grab a cup of coffee, grab a cup of tea, sit down and let's, do this life together. And so, it's so strange because on one hand, this feels like a huge community. And then on the other hand, sometimes it feels like Esther and I just looking at each other over Zoom and talking into a microphone.
Yeah. I mean, because let's be clear, we do not get those messages every week and we do not get comments like that all the time. Like this is like, these are exciting when they come because they're not super common. And I know that for the most part, like I listen to lots of podcasts that encourage me and help me and I don't send a message every time.
Oh,
and it's like, so it really is exciting when they come because you're like, oh my word, somebody actually listened to that. So let's talk about, I don't want this to be like uber long. So let's talk about 2021 briefly. Okay. We're going to hit on like a few of the highlights of 2021, and then we're going to jump into what's coming ahead, the changes ahead. Okay.
Do you want me to do the top 3 episodes or do you want to do?
Why don't you go to that? Okay. And then, no, sorry. I'll do that. And then you do the other thing.
Okay.
This is what happens. We're not going to edit that out. Okay. So the top 3 episodes of 2021, we just thought it'd be fun for you to know out of this past year, what have been the most listened to episodes. And of course, it kind of makes sense because they all were at the beginning of the year. And so as an episode is out longer, there's more listens because people go back and listen, over time. But the top one was number 134, 4 Keys to Becoming a Better Communicator. And I think that was a solo episode that I did.
I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was. So I talked about communication. I don't know what I said, but it was probably pretty
exciting. You don't know what you said. I love that. Maybe we should go back and listen to it.
I could, if I looked at the show notes, I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Maybe we should use the 4 keys and become better communicators.
Right. Yeah. We pulled those up right before we recorded. So that one was number 1. So if you haven't listened to that might be, and you want to be a better communicator, I'm sure there's some helpful tips in that episode. Yeah. And then the next one, number 2, was actually the episode right before that, episode 133. And it was about values and leading as a woman in a male dominated industry. And that was our guest, Tammy Berklid.
Yes.
And she was great. I loved her.
Yeah, that was a great episode.
Yeah. She really actually owns a construction company. So definitely not a common thing for a woman. And so that was great to hear her perspective on how she got to that point and then some of the ways she runs the company. And then number 3 was episode 139. And that was about becoming a trustworthy leader by developing consistency. Holly's favorite topic.
My favorite topic.
Okay, that's sarcasm if you can't hear it through the earbuds. But we actually did, and this kind of brings me to one point I want to make, is that a lot of times throughout the past 3.5 years, we've done different series.
Yeah.
And that was part of our leadership traits series, as was the communication one. So those are great. If you're looking for a particular topic, I just want to mention this. You can go to my website, estherlittlefield.com, and you can use the little search icon and type in any word that you might be looking for. So if you are looking for something on communication, type in communication and all the posts and podcast episodes that I have on my site will pop up for you. And then sometimes, like I said, sometimes this is part of a series, and usually it'll be tagged in that series. And so just pulling that up really quick, we talked about vulnerability. We talked about integrity. We talked about servant leadership. We talked about communication, consistency, and surrender all throughout the year. And those, I think those were all in 2021. And so this was some of the things we did over the past year that we were trying to help people with what kind of traits do you need to have to be a better leader. So just so you know, you can always go to our website and do a search, and you might find something if you're looking for a particular topic. So
I like it when we do series. I think those are fun, especially when we focus on topics and then we have a couple of different guests and whatnot. Yeah. I don't know. I think those are really enjoyable.
Yeah.
Just my 2 cents on that.
Okay. So what are some of the other highlights of 2021 that you wanted to mention, just in terms of like what we talked about?
So one of the things that is really important to Esther and I is that we do not shy away from really hard topics. And so I just kind of made a list of some of the things that we talked about in 2021 that were, not easy things to chat about. And so, we talked about male dominated industries, domestic abuse, cancel culture, burnout and mental health, money, which is always a really great topic, diversity and race, food addiction, and infant loss. And so, these are the types of things that we want to address. And we're always looking for, or always welcome to have, experts in any of these topics or any other hard topics to just kind of chat with us through these things. Because I think one of the things about both of us is we're thinkers. We like to think about things as they happen and trying to, figure out how our beliefs fit into these things and how we can, live in these cultures that are experiencing these phenomenons like cancel culture or the race issue or whatnot. And so we always love talking about those things, but we want to do it in a really healthy, respectful way. And we don't want to just come out and say, well, this is what I think, and not have a formed thought about it. And so anytime we can get any women who are really in these areas. We want to talk about them.
Yeah.
And, we're not afraid to go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not afraid to go there. So,
and this kind of goes back to what you shared earlier about the guests that we bring on, and basically that we want you as the listener to be a listener of discernment. Part of that is knowing that sometimes we might have guests that even we don't necessarily agree with 100% of what they say, or they might present something that we actually haven't studied or taken time to dig into.
Yeah.
And so again, that goes back to, we're not necessarily saying that we're only going to have people on the podcast that align 100% with everything we think. And that's just impossible anyway. I think that's a silly idea that you could ever do that, because Holly and I don't agree on everything. My husband and I don't agree on everything. I mean, there's, so that's just, I think that's a wrong goal. But really, we want to have these conversations to get you thinking, to get you considering, praying into scripture more, so that you can come to, where do I land on money? Where do I land on dealing with mental health issues? Like, there's so many things that we need to be able to understand and address as leaders, especially because if you're leading in any capacity, outside of your home or even inside of your home, you're going to be coming up against some of these topics, whether you like it or not. Yeah. There are going to be things that come up at your church. You may not like it, but you got to figure out how to deal with it. And if you haven't taken the time to think about it, it's going to put you in a really hard position, So this is part of what we want to do too, is bring up these topics that maybe are uncomfortable, but that help you to be a better leader when you take the time to dig in.
I was just kind of thinking, like, it's so good to have already thought about these things when they come up to you in your leadership, in roles or in business or wherever they come up. But, I was just, when you said that, it made me think of like, I was riding in the car the other day and Eli was asking me, what's this? What's that? And like, even the fact that I can sometimes say, I don't have the answer or I don't know, but here's at least what I've thought about. Here's what I know here. You know what I mean? And so just the conversations that I have in the car with my son sometimes are, I need to be thinking about these things. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So that was 2021.
Yep.
And let me say, before we move on from that really quickly, if there is a topic that we haven't discussed that you think we need to discuss, or that, you'd like to see an episode on, we have a few things in mind that we haven't broached yet, that we've gotten some people that are going to be talking about these things. Anyway, so we have some topics ahead that we haven't touched yet, but if there's anything you think that we need to talk about, we'd love to hear about it. You can send us an email. You can submit a contact form on Esther's website. You can join the Facebook group and let us know. You can DM us on Instagram or Facebook, any of those types of ways that work for you. You can send those in, and we'd love to talk about it if it aligns with the sort of content that we like to bring you. So, So
definitely,
we'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay. Now we're going to talk about 2022 changes ahead. And so we know based on 2020 that these are the plans we're making right now, and they may change in the future. Yeah. But for right now, we kind of want to let you know, after talking about where we've been, where we're going, and we care about you and we want you to still be committed to us, and we're still committed to you, but we want you to kind of understand what this looks like going forward and what that kind of looks like for ourselves, for changes, for how things are kind of coming down the pike for 2022. Yeah. So I'll let you take it away, Esther.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, so, we've already said this, but I'm just going to reiterate. We have released an episode every Tuesday for 3.5 years.
Yep.
And there's been bonus content thrown in above and beyond that. So if you calculate how many, we have more than 185 episodes or 184 episodes because of those bonus episodes. So at least once a week, there's been an episode. And at this point, we have not yet had any sponsors or had any direct income for the most part from this podcast. Holly has done this entirely voluntarily for 3.5 years. So first of all, shout out to Holly, because without her, I would definitely have not survived. And my business and my community has grown as a result of this podcast. So there is indirect growth for sure as a result of this podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
And really, I knew going in and Holly knew going in, this was a passion project. This was something that we were saying, we're not necessarily expecting to get paid, quote unquote, from doing this.
Right.
But it is a lot of work to create content week after week. There is a ton of planning that goes on behind the scenes. There's a ton of selecting guests. There is responding to the emails. I pay my assistant now to reply to all the emails we get from people pitching to be on the show. So there's a lot that happens behind the scenes of a podcast that most people are not aware of. And it takes time, it takes energy, it takes creative effort, and then not to mention what happens after we actually record the episodes, right? Like we got to send this to our editor who we pay to edit now, because I don't want to spend 3 or 4 hours of my week editing the episodes because that's how long it was taking me. Yeah. And, that takes time. It takes money. And so really it's a lot. And I also started another podcast last year in 2020. I started my Christian Woman Business podcast. So in case you don't know that, I do have a second podcast that is more geared specifically to women that are growing a business online. Mm-hmm. And that is really actually where my focus for my own business has shifted in the past couple of years, from being a service provider to really more focused on podcasting stuff. And then now really more into helping Christian women grow and market a business online. Mm-hmm. And so all of that to say, it's a lot and I'm tired.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that we are feeling it. I think we're just feeling the effects of doing this work, which we love. Like, let's just be clear. We love it. That if I could just do this all the time, I probably would. Like, I honestly love the interviewing. I love getting to have the conversations. Yeah. I love putting this content out. But like what we teach and what we have shared, it's important to assess and reflect where you're at from time to time and to consider where God is asking you to focus. And to be honest, there are some changes in my own personal life as well as in my business that I realized something has to give. Yeah. I have to give up something in some way in order to do these other things that I know are the most important things that I need to be putting my effort and time into right now.
Yeah.
And so we are making a decision about the podcast, and people are probably like, hopefully, we're not quitting. So that's, we've already referred to the future and the 2022. So we're not quitting.
Yeah.
But we are scaling back. We are going to scale back in 2022 to less frequent episodes. Mm-hmm. And that's not an easy thing for me to say. Like, to be honest, I probably have had a little bit of pride around the fact that we've had an episode every week and we haven't missed a week. I mean, there's been a lot of times where it was very possible for us to just be like, whatever, we're just not putting an episode out this week, but we have been committed to that. But
we've been extremely consistent.
Consistency. But at the same time, like I said, we're at a point where we had to decide, like, are we able to sustain this weekly effort? Or are there other things that we need to, and I'm saying we, mostly it's me. Mostly it was me saying this.
Yeah, but we did have a conversation. Yeah. Was that a month or two ago?
It was a couple months ago. Yeah. Yeah. Because this has been on the horizon for a while of just deciding this. It's not been an easy decision.
Yeah.
And this is actually releasing the very last Tuesday of the year. But at this point, we're recording it at the beginning of December. And I have not made an ultimate final decision on what it's going to actually look like.
No.
So the chances are that we will go to episodes a couple times a month. That's the most likely scenario.
Yep.
And the most likely scenario is that one of those episodes will either be me and Holly, or me solo, or Holly solo.
Yeah.
And then the other episode will be an interview. That's the most likely scenario at this point. But there's a chance we may just take an entire month off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So by the time this releases, I will probably include a written note in the summary of what that decision is for January, like whether there will be content in January or not. But again, it's recognizing a need for rest. The other factor here is that since we started the podcast, there have been about a bazillion more podcasts released into the world. I'm being facetious, but there are more.
Actually really close to the number.
It's probably close to a bazillion, but there are now other podcasts for women in leadership, and which is awesome. Like, I am not upset about that in the least, but I know that if you're listening to this episode, you're probably a diehard, because by this point in the episode, if you weren't a diehard, you just stopped. But if you're a diehard, even the diehards may not listen to every episode of our podcast. And it's because we are a longer form podcast. We are not a short podcast. And I know that. And I've not apologized about that, because I like the way we've formulated this podcast.
Yep.
But the fact is, I know that you are busy. I know you may have other podcasts you listen to. So it's possible you have not listened to every episode. And so for us, part of this is going down to twice a month, most likely, is hopefully going to give you the chance to actually listen to every episode, to consume the content, because there will be more time in between the episodes. And therefore it would be a little bit more manageable to keep up or to catch up on past episodes. Because again, we really believe that every episode we've released is valuable and can help you in some way. So maybe there's stuff that you haven't listened to that you could use. If we do take a full break in January, then maybe you just go back and listen to back episodes that you missed. So that's the update. It feels hard to say.
How do you feel about it now that you said it?
I feel sad, really. Yeah. I feel sad, but I also feel like once we decided, I felt a sense of relief.
Yeah.
Because I just know that I've had too many things that I've been trying to do. And when you're trying to do too many things, you don't do them all well. I mean, you guys know I've been trying to write a book, but guess what? I haven't written a book. I haven't even finished the proposal. And part of that is I haven't had the space, the creative mental space to invest in that. So that's part of this, is moving into 2022 and saying that has to be a priority for me in the new year. And therefore I have to give up some of my creative juices from that I put into this podcast to put into this other project that I sense God is saying I got to do,
Yeah.
So that's part of it. And it may not be the best or wisest decision in terms of business, but that's not always, we never know what decision is going to lead to what thing, but essentially this is what I sense as God's right step for me at this moment in time.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we've always said this right from the beginning, we'll be faithful in doing this, and God can bring the increase and he can bring the decrease, and whatever he wants to use from this, it's up to him. However he wants this to go out there. And if he wants us to stop, then we will. If he wants us to continue, then we will. And so it's just really about listening to his leading and choosing to be obedient. Because honestly, if God said to stop tomorrow, I would be really sad. Really sad.
And honestly, I had to contemplate that option. I had to contemplate the option of what if we're supposed to get done entirely.
Yeah.
But I didn't sense that was what he was saying.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, we need to be willing to be obedient, whether or not it aligns up with our personal desires.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the things that has been just impressed on me too is I feel so grateful that this has been the outlet that God has been able to use our gifts in.
Yeah.
And, for me, knowing how my roles have changed in leadership over the years and, my passions and my desires, this has been a really amazing creative outlet for all those things when I didn't have it anywhere else. And so we love doing this, but we also love our listeners, and we really love the network that has grown and the other women that we've been able to come in contact with. And I don't know, I'm saying this now, like I'm obviously willing to do whatever God is calling us to do. But yeah, it would be really upsetting and sad.
Yeah.
But so, in the end, like, I also want to say, like, we know we can trust God's goodness. And if he's calling us to something else, it's for a reason. And, it was a step of faith to do this. We didn't know what it was going to look like. And so if there's something else out there, I want to be sad and grieve what's here, but I also want to be excited for whatever he has in the future for however he wants to use our gifts. And so, that's just kind of how I'm thinking about it right now. And I'm getting a sense of sadness right now, but that's okay.
Okay. So we, at this point in time, as Holly said, nothing is permanent, right? I mean, 2020 taught us to hold everything loosely. So we're holding this loosely. This is the current plan. Like I said, check the show notes to know if I put something in there about what to expect for January. Because at this point, as I'm recording, I don't know. I haven't decided. And so really, then just stick with us. Like we ask if you have enjoyed this podcast, if it's helped you, sharing it with others. If you happen to know someone who has a lot of money and wants to donate or be a sponsor and say, hey, we'll pay you to keep creating this content. Like that could change things. Honestly, if someone said, we want to pay you to, because there's people that do that. There are podcasts that really are like in a network or in a organization that pays the hosts to create the content. And that's a whole different scenario. We are doing this on our own, and that's okay, because that's what we have had up to this point. But I'm not saying it couldn't change. So that being said, we're gonna wrap up. But we always we wrap up with a fun question of the day. And
because we don't want to end on sad note.
No, we need to turn this around.
Sad.
No, it's just a change.
Just a change. Yeah.
What is your favorite thing to do on New Year's Eve? That's
you ready?
The question.
This is really big.
I need to hear your answer.
Okay. Nothing.
I hate exciting.
New Year's Eve.
Oh, that's right. You are. That's
I'm
weird.
A grumpus.
You're like
the Grinch.
Scrooge. You're like a Scrooge for New Year's Eve. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you just want to stay home and do nothing. Like you just don't even want to like watch the ball drop or anything. You just want to be in bed asleep at midnight.
No one gets excited that it's like, oh, it's the next day. Like, let's, you know what I mean? So, and I get it. It's a new year and whatever, but I don't care.
Okay. Yeah. Cause you don't really like the whole New Year's thing, like the whole, like, New Year's resolutions and all that kind of stuff.
Well, so I've done them, and by my birthday, it's usually done.
Yeah.
And my birthday is January 12th. So and probably I'm grouchy because Christmas has just gotten over. My birthday is coming. And I don't know. It's like, what recycled gift is someone going to give me? It's so ungrateful. Okay, you guys can totally judge me.
But just awful.
I've gotten lots of things that like were literally like the tag ripped off and been re-gifted.
That is not okay.
Or like, clearance after Christmas. Like, and which I'm a clearance shopper, but there's a difference of like when something has been trampled by the Christmas holiday and you can tell that it is just not. So
my gosh. Okay.
If you have a birthday like close to Christmas, you understand this.
My mom's birthday is 3 days before Christmas. So it's, that's just not a good time. Because it's like, oh, here, Mom, here's your Christmas /birthday gift.
Yeah.
I bought you a bigger gift and it's now both holidays. I've never done that.
I mean, whatever. But like, I don't mind that. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I had my senior year, I just had a really crappy New Year's Eve experience. And I think I got soured from it ever since then. And I don't know. So I'm the Grinch of New Year's.
Okay.
Okay. What about you?
For me, I would say, I have never been a big like go out and party person. Believe it or not.
That does not. Yeah,
I do not really dance. Like Esther doesn't really dance. It's scary when I dance.
Did you dance with us at our friend's wedding? Do you remember
Yes,
this?
I did.
You did.
But that's because, I will dance when there is a large crowd of people.
Okay.
And the lights are real low and nobody can really see, like no one's really paying attention to any one person and the moves that they may or may not be able to do. And when there's like good music and I like that kind of dancing.
Yeah,
I can do that, but like normal dancing, no. Like normal, like couple dancing, like I'm awkward and I don't know what to do. Cause I grew up not being allowed to dance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was not allowed to dance at any point in time in my childhood / young, teenage years.
Young adulthood.
Okay. So that's a long tangent, but what I like to do on New Year's Eve. So the point is I don't go out to any fancy shindig, but I like just like a few times we've done this where we've gotten together with friends and we've just had like a big like party at our house, game night, tons of yummy food.
Those are fun.
Just like that kind of thing. And it worked better when the kids were younger and we could like send the kids to grandparents' houses. But now that our kids are older, they're like the ones that are at the point where they might want to stay up until midnight. And my daughter, at least previously, has never been able to handle staying up that late. So we sort of had this weird time where it was basically just stay at home and do nothing. Yeah. And then now I feel like we could kind of go back to probably having some sort of party with friends. Although last year, that wasn't so much of a thing. So but I like just being with other people. But again, I can also just be okay with going to bed at 11 o'clock and waking up the next day and being like, Happy New Year.
I will say I love any reason for a charcuterie board.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's enough of a reason right there. But as you were talking about, do you remember when Netflix came up with the themed countdowns that you could play at any point?
And pretend for the kids that it was,
oh my gosh, Netflix. Thank you from parents everywhere.
Yes, like the Madagascar one, I remember. And
oh my gosh, that's the exact one I was thinking about. That's so funny. Oh my word. So like from all the parents out there, Netflix, thank you.
Yeah.
My 13-year-old will not fall for that. Time.
No. I honestly don't think my daughter has ever stayed up until midnight. Like on New Year's Eve. Cause
I don't know if my husband's ever stayed up till midnight. Zach's usually out cold by 7:30.
Well, because honestly, like even when I talk about the friend party, a lot of times it's like, all right, 10:30. Okay, guys, see you later. We'll see you next year. Right. Like people don't actually stay at our house until midnight. That I don't think has ever happened.
Anytime I'm invited to one of those, I'm like, okay, is this really going to go till after midnight or is this like a 10, 11 o'clock situation? Yeah. Because I need to know ahead of time. But
Oh man. Well, okay. So
I just need people to know that if they were to invite me to their New Year's Eve thing, that I would not be a grouch if I went there. Right. I just need to say that. I can have a good time. I like to have fun. But
okay. So we'll put in the Facebook group. We're going to ask you guys what your favorite thing to do is. And New Year's Eve this year is on a Friday night. So that's kind of convenient because then perfect. Saturday is like, you're probably just at home and not going anywhere most likely. So all right.
Okay.
Well, thank you, friend, for listening today to our last episode of 2021. And thank you for being here with us for all of this time. And we hope that you'll stick with us moving forward, even if it looks a little different. So, thanks for joining us on the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving us a rating and review in your podcast app? This helps more women just like you find the podcast. And it also helps them to know whether the podcast would be a good fit for them. Just go to the show in your podcast app, then scroll down until you see the option for ratings and reviews. From there, you can tap to rate and write a review. It means the world to us when you take a couple minutes to do this. And thank you so much to everyone who has left a review. Now, don't forget, your leadership matters, and it's time for you to embrace your gifts and lead with confidence.
Oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought.
Blah, blah, blah.
I just clicked mute. Oh my gosh. Are you sure that we've been doing this for 3.5 years?